The morning sun peeked through the blinds as Elena Rodriguez opened her eyes. For 15 years, she had followed the same routine. Wake up at 5:30 a.m., shower, grab a quick breakfast, and head to Memorial Hospital where she worked as an emergency medic. Today was no different, or so she thought. Elena hummed quietly as she pulled into the hospital parking lot, finding her usual spot near the staff entrance. She grabbed her worn leather bag from the passenger seat, a gift from her late grandmother when Elena had first graduated from medical school. The bag held not just her personal items but also a small emergency kit she always kept on hand. Old habits die hard, she often joked with her colleagues. The hospital corridors were quiet this early in the morning. Elena waved to the night shift nurses who were finishing their rounds, exchanging brief smiles with people she had worked alongside for years. They were more than co-workers. They were a family bound together by the shared experience of saving lives. "Morning, Rodriguez," called out Dr. Patel from the nurses' station. "Director Wilson wants to see you before your shift." Elena felt a small flutter of concern. Director Wilson rarely requested meetings with staff, especially this early. "Did he say what it's about?" Dr. Patel shook his head. "No idea." "His office, 15 minutes. Elena nodded, trying to ignore the growing unease in her stomach. She made her way to the locker room, changed into her scrubs, and pinned her ID badge to her chest pocket. The familiar routine calmed her somewhat, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As she walked toward the administrative wing, Elena mentally reviewed her recent cases. Had there been a complaint? A mistake in her paperwork? She prided herself on being thorough, on never cutting corners, especially when it came to patient care. The administration area was starkly different from the rest of the hospital. All polished wood and muted colors instead of the practical, sterile white of the medical floors. Elena knocked on Director Wilson's door, her knuckles hesitating slightly against the wood. "Come in," called a voice from inside. Director Wilson wasn't alone. A woman in a sharp business suit sat across from him, a folder of papers on her lap. Elena recognized her as Patricia Hendricks from Human Resources. "Please sit down, Elena." Director Wilson gestured to an empty chair. His face gave nothing away, but the presence of someone from HR told Elena everything she needed to know. "I'll get straight to the point," he continued once Elena had seated herself. "As you know, the hospital has been facing financial difficulties for some time now." Elena nodded. Budget cuts had been a constant topic in staff meetings for months. "The board has made the difficult decision to reduce staff in several departments," he said, his voice practiced and even. "I'm afraid your position is one of those being eliminated." Though she had suspected it from the moment she saw Patricia from HR, hearing the words still felt like a physical blow. Elena had devoted her entire adult life to this hospital. She had missed birthdays, holidays, and countless family gatherings because someone needed her here. "I don't understand," she managed to say, her voice surprisingly steady. "We're already understaffed in emergency services." Director Wilson avoided her eyes, instead shuffling papers on his desk. "The cuts are happening across all departments. We're consolidating roles, and unfortunately yours was identified as redundant. Redundant. 15 years of saving lives, of working double shifts during crises, of holding patients' hands when they were scared. Reduced to redundant." Patricia from HR cleared her throat. "We've prepared a severance package," she said, opening her folder. 2 months' salary and benefits extended through the end of next month. "We'll also provide a letter of recommendation, of course." Elena listened in a daze as Patricia outlined the details of her termination. She was to clear out her locker today. Her badge would be deactivated by noon. There was an exit interview form she needed to sign. "Do you have any questions?" Patricia finally asked after explaining the process for filing for unemployment benefits. Elena had 1,000 questions. How was she supposed to pay her mortgage? What about her daughter Sophia's college tuition, due in just 3 months? Who would take care of Mrs. Abernathy, the elderly woman who came in every other week with issues that were more about loneliness than illness, and whom Elena had been quietly looking after for years? Instead, she asked, "Why me?" Director Wilson finally met her gaze. "It came down to seniority versus salary brackets. We kept those with the most experience and those who cost less." Elena understood then. She wasn't the most senior, having taken 2 years off when Sophia was born. And with 15 years of service and regular promotions, she wasn't the cheapest either. She had fallen into the gap in between. Experienced enough to command a decent salary, but not senior enough to be untouchable. I see, she said, because there was nothing else to say. The meeting concluded with handshakes that felt empty and promises to keep in touch that everyone knew were lies. Elena walked back to the locker room in a fog, barely registering the concerned looks from colleagues who could tell something was wrong. Her locker held 15 years of her life. Spare scrubs, comfortable shoes, photos of Sophia at various ages taped to the inside of the door, birthday cards from grateful patients, a stethoscope her ex-husband had given her when they were still happy together. Elena packed it all into a cardboard box provided by maintenance. "Is it true?" asked Nurse Jenkins, appearing at her side. Word traveled fast in hospitals. Elena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "This is crazy," Jenkins said, anger clear in her voice. "You're the best medic we have. Who approved this?" "It's not personal," Elena replied, echoing the words Director Wilson had used. "Just business, but it felt personal." Every item she placed in the box, the coffee mug with Lifesaver printed on it, the small stuffed bear a child had given her after she set his broken arm, the spare uniform she kept for emergencies, felt like a piece of herself being torn away. By the time she finished clearing her locker, a small crowd of colleagues had gathered. There were hugs, promises to meet for drinks soon, offers to help find new positions at other hospitals. Elena appreciated their kindness, but all she wanted was to escape before she broke down. As she walked to her car, box in arms, the weight of reality began to sink in. At 42, starting over wouldn't be easy. The job market for medical professionals was competitive, and while her experience was valuable, many hospitals were facing similar budget constraints. She placed the box in her trunk, next to her medical bag, the one she always kept fully stocked with basic emergency supplies. It was against protocol, technically, to have hospital equipment at home, but Elena had purchased these items herself over the years. You never knew when you might need to help someone, she had always believed. As she closed the trunk, her phone rang. It was Sophia calling between classes. "Hey Mom, just checking in. How's your day going?" Elena sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel as she debated what to tell her daughter. Sophia was in her final semester of pre-med, following in her mother's footsteps. The last thing Elena wanted was to worry her during finals week. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," she lied, forcing a brightness into her voice that she didn't feel. "How's your biochem project coming along?" As Sophia chatted about her classes, Elena started her car and pulled out of the hospital parking lot, the same lot she had parked in nearly every day for 15 years. She glanced in her rearview mirror at the building that had been her second home, wondering if this would be the last time she saw it as she drove away. After ending the call with her daughter, Elena sat in her car in her apartment complex parking lot, trying to gather the strength to go inside and face her new reality. Her apartment was small but comfortable, chosen specifically for its proximity to the hospital. Now that convenience seemed like a cruel joke, a daily reminder of what she had lost. Tomorrow, she decided she would update her resume and start applying to other hospitals, urgent care centers, anywhere that might need someone with her skills. Tonight, though, she would allow herself to grieve for the career and workplace family she had just lost. What Elena couldn't know, as she finally gathered her things and headed into her apartment, was that the universe had a strange way of balancing scales. In less than 24 hours, her life would change again, and this time the direction would be entirely different. Elena woke up the next morning with a heaviness in her chest that hadn't been there before. The sun was already high in the sky. She had slept past her usual early wake-up time, her body apparently forgetting 15 years of hospital scheduling in just one day. For a brief, blissful moment, she thought it had all been a bad dream. Then reality crashed back. She got up slowly, making her bed with the same precision she'd always used when preparing medical trays. Old habits. The apartment felt too quiet without her usual rush to get ready for work. She made coffee and sat at her small kitchen table, opening her laptop to begin the dreaded job search. After 2 hours of scrolling through listings and updating her resume, Elena's eyes burned from staring at the screen. Most positions wanted younger graduates they could pay less, or required certifications she didn't have. The few that matched her qualifications were across the country, which wasn't an option with Sophia in college nearby. "I need a change of scenery," she muttered to herself. Closing the laptop, Elena changed into jeans and a light sweater, civilian clothes that felt strange after years of wearing scrubs most days. She grabbed her phone, wallet, and keys, hesitating at the door. On impulse, she went back to her car and retrieved her medical bag from the trunk. She'd never gone anywhere without it before. Today didn't seem like the day to break the habit. The Sunrise Cafe was just a few blocks from Elena's apartment. She'd passed it countless times on her way to and from the hospital, but had rarely stopped in. Her schedule had never allowed for leisurely coffee breaks. Today, she had nothing but time. The cafe was busier than she expected for a weekday morning. Sunlight streamed through large windows, lighting up the rustic wooden tables and colorful local artwork on the walls. The air smelled of fresh coffee and baked goods. Elena felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders as she found an empty table near the back wall. "What can I get you?" asked a friendly waitress with a notepad. "Just a coffee, please." "And do you have Wi-Fi?" "Sure do." "Passwords on the chalkboard by the register." The waitress glanced at the medical bag Elena had placed beside her chair. "You a doctor?" "Medic," Elena replied automatically, then corrected herself. "Well, I was. Until yesterday." The waitress gave her a sympathetic look. "That's tough. First coffee's on the house, then." Elena smiled her thanks, oddly touched by this small kindness from a stranger. While waiting for her coffee, she pulled out her phone to check her emails. Nothing from any of the jobs she'd applied to online this morning. Not that she expected responses so quickly. There was, however, an email from Sophia with the subject line, "Don't worry about tuition." Elena opened it quickly, scanning her daughter's enthusiastic message about a research assistant position she'd been offered that came with a partial tuition waiver. It would cover about half of next semester's fees. Not everything, but enough to give Elena some breathing room. She typed back a quick congratulatory response, careful not to let her financial worries show. The waitress returned with her coffee, and Elena thanked her again for the free drink. She took a sip, savoring the rich flavor. Definitely better than the burnt hospital cafeteria brew she was used to. Maybe there were small perks to unemployment after all. The cafe had filled up even more while she was checking her emails. Most tables were now occupied by a mix of people, some in business attire typing on laptops, others in casual clothes chatting with friends. Elena noticed an elderly man at a table across from hers reading a newspaper. He wore an expensive-looking suit that seemed slightly too large for his thin frame, and wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. Elena turned back to her phone, opening a job search app. She was so focused on filtering results that at first she didn't register the commotion. It wasn't until she heard a woman's panicked voice cry out, "Is anyone here a doctor?" that Elena's head snapped up. The elderly man she'd noticed earlier was no longer sitting upright. He had slumped over in his chair, his newspaper scattered on the floor, his face ashen and contorted in pain. One hand clutched his chest while the other gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles had turned white. Elena was on her feet before she had time to think, medical bag in hand. "I'm a medic," she called out, pushing her way through the small crowd that had gathered. "Please give him space." The man's eyes were wide with fear, his breathing labored and irregular. Elena knelt beside him, her training taking over completely. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked, keeping her voice calm and authoritative. He managed a small nod, still clutching his chest. "My name is Elena. I'm going to help you."
"Can you tell me your name?"
"Thomas," he gasped between shallow breaths. "Thomas Whitfield. Mr. Whitfield, I need to check your vital signs. Is it okay if I touch your wrist and neck?" Another weak nod. Elena took his pulse, rapid and irregular. His skin was clammy to the touch and his lips had a bluish tint. "Someone call 911, she instructed the onlookers, not taking her eyes off her patient. "Tell them we have a man in his 70s showing signs of cardiac distress." A young man in the crowd already had his phone out. "They want to know if he's conscious and breathing," he relayed. Conscious but labored breathing. "Possible heart attack. Tell them we need an ambulance with advanced life support stat." Elena opened her medical bag and pulled out a small portable blood pressure monitor. She wrapped the cuff around Thomas's arm while continuing to speak to him in a reassuring voice. "Mr. Whitfield, I'm going to take your blood pressure now. Just try to breathe as normally as you can." The reading confirmed her suspicions. His blood pressure was dangerously high. Elena reached back into her bag and took out a small bottle. "Do you have any allergies to medications, Mr. Whitfield?" "No," he managed to say, his voice barely audible. "I'm giving you aspirin. It might help reduce damage to your heart." Can you chew it for me? She placed the tablet in his mouth, supporting his head as he struggled to comply. The cafe owner had appeared with a glass of water, which Elena used to help Thomas swallow the medicine. Ambulance says 8 minutes, called the young man with the phone. Elena knew those 8 minutes could mean the difference between life and death. She continued monitoring Thomas's vitals, noticing with growing concern that his breathing was becoming more labored and his pulse more erratic. "Sir, I'm going to move you to the floor where you can lie flat," she explained, already motioning for 2 strong-looking bystanders to help. "It will make it easier for your heart to pump blood." With careful movements, they eased Thomas from his chair onto the floor. Elena placed her folded sweater under his head and loosened his tie and collar. "Does anyone have a defibrillator?" she asked, looking around the cafe. It wasn't likely, but some public places kept them on hand. The cafe owner shook his head. "We've been meaning to get one." Elena nodded, turning her attention back to Thomas. His eyes had begun to close. "Mr. Whitfield, stay with me," she said firmly, tapping his face gently. "Look at me, Thomas." Focus on my voice. His eyelids fluttered but remained closed. Elena checked his pulse again. It was fading. Without hesitation, she tilted his head back, ensuring his airway was clear. "He's not breathing properly," she announced. "I need to start CPR." The crowd stepped back, giving her room to work. Elena positioned herself beside Thomas and began chest compressions, counting under her breath to maintain the correct rhythm. After 30 compressions, she gave 2 rescue breaths, then resumed the cycle. Time seemed to stretch and compress all at once. Elena was aware of nothing but the man beneath her hands and the desperate need to keep oxygen flowing to his brain. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she continued the compressions, pausing only to check for a pulse or deliver rescue breaths. "Where's that ambulance?" someone in the crowd asked anxiously. As if on cue, the wail of sirens became audible in the distance, growing louder by the second. Elena didn't stop her efforts even when she heard the paramedics rushing in. One of them knelt beside her. "We'll take it from here," he said, recognition dawning in his eyes. Elena Rodriguez." She glanced up, recognizing Craig Peters, one of her former colleagues from Memorial Hospital. "Cardiac event," she reported professionally, continuing compressions until Craig was ready to take over. "Approximately 6 minutes since loss of consciousness. I've administered aspirin. No defibrillator on site." The paramedics worked quickly, attaching their equipment to Thomas and preparing him for transport. Elena stepped back, suddenly aware of her racing heart and shaking hands. She watched as they stabilized him enough to transfer him onto a stretcher. "BP's stabilizing," Craig called out to his partner. "We've got a pulse." He turned to Elena. "You kept him alive long enough for us to get here. Good work." Elena simply nodded, the adrenaline beginning to fade, leaving her drained. As the paramedics wheeled Thomas toward the exit, Craig paused beside her. "He would have died without you, Elena," he said quietly. "No question." Then they were gone, sirens wailing as they rushed Thomas to the hospital, the same hospital that had decided Elena was redundant just yesterday. The cafe remained silent for a long moment after the ambulance departed. Then slowly people began to move and talk again. Several patrons approached Elena, offering words of praise and thanks. The cafe owner insisted on giving her a fresh coffee and something to eat, on the house permanently. Elena accepted their kindness with quiet grace, but inside, a strange mix of emotions swirled. Sadness that a man had nearly died, satisfaction that her skills had made a difference, anger that those same skills had been deemed unnecessary by hospital administrators, and, most surprisingly, a sense of purpose stronger than she'd felt in years. As she sipped her second free coffee of the day, Elena wondered about Thomas Whitfield. Would he survive? Would she ever know? She sent up a silent prayer for his recovery, unaware that their paths would cross again much sooner than she could possibly imagine. The cafe slowly returned to normal after the ambulance left. People went back to their conversations, though many kept glancing at Elena with a mix of awe and respect. She sat alone at her table, hands still trembling slightly as her body processed the leftover adrenaline. "That was incredible," said a woman who approached her table, cell phone clutched in her hand. "Are you really not working at a hospital anymore?" Elena looked up, surprised by the question. No, yesterday was my last day." The woman shook her head in disbelief. "That's crazy. I've never seen anyone act so quickly in an emergency. You knew exactly what to do." Just training, Elena replied modestly. Well, I recorded some of it, the woman admitted, holding up her phone. I hope that's okay. My sister's in nursing school, and I thought it might help her to see a professional in action. The way you took charge was amazing. Elena wasn't sure how she felt about being recorded, but the emergency was in a public place. As long as you don't share it publicly, that man deserves his privacy. Of course, the woman nodded quickly. I just wanted to show my sister. Elena wasn't convinced, but there wasn't much she could do about it now. She gathered her things, suddenly eager to leave the cafe. The owner stopped her on the way out. Please come back any time, he said, pressing a card into her hand. Free coffee for life. What you did today, most people would have frozen. Elena tucked the card into her pocket with a small smile. Thank you. I hope you'll be okay. Outside, the day had grown warmer. Elena walked slowly with no particular destination in mind. Her thoughts kept returning to Thomas Whitfield and the look of fear in his eyes. She hoped she'd done enough, acted quickly enough. In her 15 years as a medic, she'd learned that sometimes even perfect technique couldn't save everyone. Without realizing it, she had walked several blocks and now found herself near Memorial Hospital. The familiar building loomed ahead and Elena stopped, uncertain. Part of her wanted to go in, to check if Thomas had been brought there, to see if he had survived. But her badge no longer worked, and she wasn't ready to face her former colleagues as a visitor, rather than staff. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. How's the job hunt going, Mom? Elena stared at the message. What should she say? That instead of finding a job, she'd spent the morning performing CPR on a stranger? That despite being unemployed, she'd just used her medical skills more intensely than she had in months at the hospital? Taking a break today, she typed back. Looking again tomorrow. She put her phone away and turned from the hospital, heading home instead. The weight of her medical bag seemed heavier now. She'd need to restock some of the items she'd used helping Thomas. At home, Elena cleaned and organized her supplies, a task that had always brought her comfort. Each item had its place, each served a specific purpose. If only the rest of life could be so orderly and predictable. Her doorbell rang unexpectedly around 5 p.m. Elena wasn't expecting anyone, and few people visited her apartment unannounced. She opened the door to find Craig Peters, the paramedic from that morning, still in uniform. Craig, what are you doing here? He smiled, though he looked tired. Thought you might want to know about your patient from this morning. Elena stepped back to let him in. You didn't have to come in person. You could have called. I was passing by, he shrugged, and honestly, I wanted to check on you too. Yesterday's news hit everyone hard. Elena gestured for him to sit on her small couch while she took the armchair across from him. So how is he? Mr. Whitfield? Stable, Craig reported. They took him straight to cardiac catheterization when we arrived. Massive heart attack, could have gone either way. The cardiologist said your quick action with the aspirin and CPR likely prevented permanent damage. Relief washed over Elena. Thank goodness. I kept wondering if I'd done enough. More than enough, Craig assured her. The doc actually asked who the skilled first responder was. I told him it was you. Elena smiled wryly. Bet that was awkward, explaining I was just let go. Yeah, well, Craig looked uncomfortable. About that, word's spreading pretty fast around the hospital. People are upset. Jenkins started a petition. A petition? For what? To get the administration to reconsider the layoffs, especially yours. There's talk about bringing it up at the next board meeting. Elena shook her head. That's kind, but I doubt it will change anything. Decisions like that don't get reversed. Maybe not, Craig admitted, but it's worth a try. We miss you already, and it's only been a day. He stood to leave. Anyway, I should get back. Just wanted you to know your patient pulled through. Thanks for coming by, Elena said, walking him to the door. It means a lot. After Craig left, Elena made herself a simple dinner and tried to focus on a book, but her thoughts kept wandering. She wondered about Thomas Whitfield. Who was he? Did he have family worried about him? Would he recover fully? Just before bed, Elena checked her email one last time. Among the usual junk and a few job listing updates was a message from an unfamiliar address. D. Whitfield, whitfieldauto.com. The subject line read, Regarding Thomas Whitfield, urgent. Elena opened it with curiosity. Dear Ms. Rodriguez, my name is Daniel Whitfield. I believe you helped my father, Thomas Whitfield, during a medical emergency this morning at Sunrise Cafe. The hospital gave me your name as the person who performed life-saving measures before the ambulance arrived. I cannot express my gratitude adequately in an email, but I would very much like to thank you in person. If you're willing, please contact me at this email address or call my cell, 555-728-9041, with deepest thanks. Daniel Whitfield Automotive Group. Elena read the email twice. Whitfield Automotive Group? The name sounded vaguely familiar. She did a quick internet search and was surprised to see multiple locations across 3 states. Thomas Whitfield wasn't just any elderly man. He appeared to be the founder of a major luxury car dealership chain. She considered the email, unsure how to respond. She hadn't helped Thomas for recognition or reward. She'd simply done what any medical professional would do. Yet she could understand a son's desire to thank the person who saved his father's life. After some thought, she wrote back, "Dear Mr. Whitfield, I'm relieved to hear your father is receiving proper care. Please know that I was simply doing what I'm trained to do, and I'm grateful I was in the right place at the right time. While I appreciate your offer to meet, no thanks are necessary. I wish your father a swift and complete recovery. Sincerely, Elena Rodriguez." She sent the email and got ready for bed, unaware that her simple, polite response would not be the end of the matter. Elena woke the next morning to her phone ringing. It was a number she didn't recognize, and for a moment she hoped it might be a callback from one of her job applications. She answered with a professional tone. "Elena Rodriguez speaking. Ms. Rodriguez, this is Daniel Whitfield." Elena sat up in bed, surprised. "Mr. Whitfield, Please," he interrupted gently. "Call me Daniel. I hope I'm not calling too early, but I wanted to reach you before you made other plans for today." "It's not too early," Elena assured him, though she glanced at her bedside clock, 7:30 a.m. "But as I mentioned in my email, there's really no need. My father is asking for you," Daniel said, his voice softening. "He's conscious now and specifically requested to meet the woman who saved his life. The doctors say he's stable enough for a short visit. Would you consider coming to Memorial Hospital this morning?" Elena hesitated. She hadn't expected this turn of events, and the thought of returning to Memorial so soon after being let go made her uneasy. Yet she could hear the genuine hope in Daniel's voice, and she couldn't help wondering about the man whose life she'd helped save. Yes, I can come," she found herself saying. "What time would be best?" "Whenever works for you," Daniel replied quickly. "I'll be there all day. I could be there around 10 if that's not too soon. 10 is perfect." "Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. My father's in the cardiac care unit, room 412. Just tell the nurses who you are and they'll let you in. I'll make sure they're expecting you." After hanging up, Elena sat on her bed for a long moment. Yesterday, she'd been an unemployed medic with uncertain prospects. Today, she was headed back to her former workplace to meet with the family of a patient she'd helped outside of any official capacity. Life certainly took unexpected turns. As she showered and dressed, Elena wondered about the Whitfields. What would she say to Thomas? What would he say to her? She chose clothes carefully, professional but not too formal. This wasn't a job interview after all, just a brief meeting with a grateful patient. Yet as she drove to Memorial Hospital, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that this visit might somehow be important, that this connection forged in crisis might lead to something she couldn't yet imagine. It was probably just wishful thinking, she told herself. But as she parked in the visitor lot of the hospital that had so recently let her go, she allowed herself a small spark of hope that perhaps her story wasn't over yet. It was just taking an unexpected turn. Walking through the doors of Memorial Hospital felt strange to Elena. For 15 years, she had entered through the staff entrance, badge ready, mind already focused on the day's challenges. Now she approached the main reception desk as a visitor, feeling oddly out of place in a building she knew as well as her own home. "I'm here to see Thomas Whitfield," she told the receptionist. "Room 412, his son Daniel is expecting me." The receptionist looked up with a smile of recognition. "You're Elena Rodriguez, aren't you? The one who saved Mr. Whitfield at the cafe?" Word traveled fast in hospitals. "Yes, that's me." "Everyone's talking about it," the receptionist said, handing Elena a visitor badge. "Go right up, cardiac unit, 4th floor." In the elevator, Elena bumped into Dr. Patel, who did a double take when he saw her. "Elena, what are you doing here?" Don't tell me they've already realized their mistake and hired you back? She shook her head. Just visiting someone. The Whitfield case? Dr. Patel guessed. I heard what you did. Textbook emergency response. That man would have died without you. Elena shifted uncomfortably at the praise. Just happened to be in the right place. With the right skills, Dr. Patel added firmly. You know, Director Wilson was in the room when they brought Mr. Whitfield in. The paramedics mentioned your name specifically. Wilson looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. The elevator doors opened before Elena could respond. She stepped out and Dr. Patel held the door. The petition has over 100 signatures already, he said. Just so you know. Elena nodded her thanks and headed toward room 412. The cardiac care unit was familiar territory. How many patients had she helped transport here over the years? How many families had she comforted in these hallways? Outside room 412, a tall man in his mid-40s looked up from his phone as Elena approached. He had the same blue eyes as Thomas Whitfield, though his hair was darker with streaks of gray at the temples. He wore an expensive-looking suit that somehow didn't seem out of place even in a hospital hallway. Miss Rodriguez, he asked, extending his hand. Daniel Whitfield. Thank you so much for coming. His handshake was firm but not overpowering. Please call me Elena. How is your father doing? Much better today, Daniel said, relief evident in his voice. The doctors say he's surprisingly strong for his age. They're talking about moving him out of cardiac care tomorrow if he continues to improve. He gestured toward the door.
He's awake and very eager to meet you. Elena followed Daniel into the room.
Hospital rooms were always the same. The mechanical bed, the monitoring equipment, the antiseptic smell. Thomas Whitfield looked smaller against the white sheets, tubes and wires connecting him to various machines. But his eyes were alert as they turned toward the door and some color had returned to his face. Dad, Daniel said. This is Elena Rodriguez. Thomas's face lit up. The angel from the cafe, Elena smiled. Hardly an angel, Mr. Whitfield. Just a medic who happened to be there. A medic who happened to be there with a fully stocked medical bag and the knowledge to use it, Thomas countered. His voice stronger than Elena expected. Please sit down. He gestured to the chair beside his bed. Elena sat while Daniel took a position at the foot of the bed. I understand I owe you my life, Thomas continued, his eyes fixed on Elena. Daniel tells me the doctor said without your quick action, I likely wouldn't have made it to the hospital alive. I'm just glad I could help, Elena said simply. Thomas studied her face. Daniel also tells me you were recently let go from this very hospital. Is that correct? Elena blinked in surprise. Yes, but how did you... I asked around, Daniel admitted. When the nurses mentioned your name, several recognized it. They were quite vocal about the injustice of your termination. Budget cuts, Elena explained with a small shrug. These things happen. Thomas shook his head slowly. Not to people with your skills. Not when those skills save lives. He exchanged a look with his son. I may be old, but I recognize talent when I see it. My business wasn't built by letting talented people walk out the door. Dad owns Whitfield Automotive Group, Daniel explained. 12 luxury car dealerships across 3 states. I noticed when I looked up your name, Elena admitted. It's quite impressive, Thomas waved away the compliment. Built from nothing over 40 years, but that's not why I wanted to meet you. He shifted slightly in his bed, wincing as he adjusted his position. I wanted to thank you properly and to make you an offer. Elena raised her eyebrows. An offer? The Whitfield Family Foundation, Daniel explained. It's our charitable organization. We fund various healthcare initiatives, among other things. We've been looking for a medical director, Thomas continued. Someone with real-world experience who understands emergency care. Someone who could develop training programs for underserved communities. Elena stared at them in surprise. And you want me? But you barely know me. I know enough, Thomas said firmly. I know you kept your medical bag even after losing your job. I know you didn't hesitate to help a stranger in distress. I know your technique was perfect. The cardiologist was quite impressed by how little damage my heart sustained given the severity of the attack. It would be a full-time position, Daniel added. Competitive salary, benefits, the works. You'd be developing programs, overseeing their implementation, and occasionally providing training yourself. Elena's mind raced. It sounded almost too good to be true. This is unexpected, she managed to say. Thomas smiled. Life's best opportunities often are. Mine certainly was. Did Daniel tell you I started with just one rundown car lot? The bank manager who approved my first loan did it because I'd performed the Heimlich maneuver on his wife at a restaurant the week before. You never told me that, Daniel said. Surprised. It's true, Thomas nodded. Sometimes kindness and skill create their own karma. I've never forgotten that lesson. A nurse entered the room checking the monitors. Looking good, Mr. Whitfield, but remember the doctor said to keep visits short. Just a few more minutes, Thomas promised. When the nurse left, he turned back to Elena. I know this is sudden. Take some time to think about it. Daniel can email you the details. I will, Elena promised. It sounds like an amazing opportunity. There's one more thing, Thomas said, glancing at his son. Daniel, would you show her? Daniel pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then handed it to Elena. On the screen was a video of her helping Thomas at the cafe. The footage was a bit shaky, but clearly showed Elena taking charge, administering CPR, and directing bystanders until the paramedics arrived. That woman at the cafe did share her video after all, Elena murmured. It's been viewed over 50,000 times since yesterday, Daniel said. People are calling you the cafe angel online. Elena handed the phone back, unsure how to feel about her sudden internet fame. I didn't do it for recognition, which only makes it more deserving of recognition, Thomas said. People need heroes, Elena. Real ones who act without thinking of reward. He reached out to take her hand. Please consider my offer, not just for my sake, but for all the people you could help through our foundation. The nurse returned, more insistent this time. I'm sorry, but Mr. Whitfield needs his rest now. Elena stood. Of course. Thank you both for everything. I'll definitely think about your offer, Mr. Whitfield. Thomas, please, he insisted. And one last thing. Daniel will be at your apartment tomorrow morning with something else I want you to have. A token of my appreciation. Elena started to protest, but Thomas held up his hand. Indulge an old man who's just had a brush with mortality. It would mean a lot to me. Daniel walked Elena to the elevator. Dad doesn't take no for an answer easily, he said with a smile. Especially when he believes in something or someone. He's a remarkable man, Elena replied. You must be very close. We are now, Daniel admitted. Wasn't always the case. Building the business took most of his time when I was growing up. He handed Elena a business card. All my contact info is here. The foundation details will be in your email by this evening. He hesitated, then added, and I'll see you tomorrow morning around 9 if that works for you. Elena nodded, curious despite herself about what Thomas's token of appreciation might be. 9 is fine. Thank you, Daniel. As she left the hospital, Elena felt lighter than she had in days. The unexpected job offer was more than she could have hoped for. The salary Daniel had mentioned was substantially more than she'd made at Memorial, and the work sounded meaningful and important. She stopped at a grocery store on the way home, splurging on ingredients for a proper meal instead of the instant noodles she'd been planning. Tonight felt like a night to celebrate, even if nothing was official yet. At home, as she prepared dinner, Elena's phone buzzed with a new email. Daniel had sent over the details of the foundation position, along with a formal offer letter. The salary was even more generous than he'd suggested, with benefits that far exceeded what she'd had at the hospital. Elena sat at her kitchen table, reading through the documents in amazement. 24 hours ago, she'd been an unemployed medic with dwindling savings and growing worries. Now she had a job offer beyond anything she could have expected, and a mysterious token of appreciation arriving tomorrow. She called Sophia, unable to keep the news to herself any longer. Mom, is everything okay? Sophia sounded concerned. Everything's wonderful, Elena replied. You won't believe what happened. As she recounted the events of the past 2 days to her daughter, Elena still couldn't quite believe how drastically her life had changed. From losing her job to saving Thomas Whitfield's life to receiving this incredible offer, it was almost like a dream. What she didn't know was that the biggest surprise was still to come, waiting for tomorrow morning when Daniel Whitfield would arrive at her apartment building. Elena woke earlier than usual the next morning. She had tossed and turned most of the night, her mind racing with thoughts about the foundation job offer and curiosity about what Thomas Whitfield planned to give her. Despite his wealth, she hoped it wouldn't be anything too extravagant. She had helped him because it was the right thing to do. Not for any reward. After showering and dressing, she tidied her small apartment, slightly embarrassed by the thought of Daniel Whitfield seeing her modest living situation. The place was clean, but clearly showed the budget constraints of a single mother who had prioritized her daughter's education over home upgrades. At exactly 9 o'clock, her doorbell rang. Elena took a deep breath and opened the door to find Daniel looking surprisingly casual in jeans and a light sweater, rather than yesterday's business suit. "Good morning," he greeted her with a smile. "I hope I'm not too early?" "Not at all," Elena assured him, stepping back to let him in. "Can I offer you coffee?" "Actually," Daniel said, "I was hoping you might come outside with me first. Dad's surprise is waiting." Elena raised an eyebrow but reached for her jacket. "That sounds mysterious," Daniel laughed. "Dad has always had a flair for the dramatic. It's part of what made him such a successful businessman." They walked together down the 3 flights of stairs to the building's entrance. Elena pushed open the door to the street and stopped dead in her tracks. Parked along the curb in front of her building were 4 gleaming luxury vehicles: a sleek black Mercedes sedan, a silver Porsche sports car, a dark blue Bentley, and a white Range Rover. Each car was adorned with a large red bow on the hood. A small crowd of neighbors had already gathered, pointing and staring at the unusual sight. Elena turned to Daniel, confusion written across her face. "What is this?" "My father's token of appreciation," Daniel explained, handing her a small envelope. "He asked me to give you this." With shaking hands, Elena opened the envelope and unfolded the note inside. "Dear Elena, words cannot express my gratitude for what you did. You gave me more time with my family and a chance to continue the work I love. Please accept these vehicles as a token of my appreciation. Keep one for yourself if you wish and sell the others, or keep them all. The choice is yours, just as I have the choice to live another day thanks to your quick actions and skilled hands. With deepest gratitude, Thomas Whitfield." Elena looked up from the note, stunned. I can't accept this. It's too much," Daniel smiled gently. "Dad figured you'd say that. He told me to tell you that he'd be deeply hurt if you refused his gift. He's always believed that life-saving actions deserve life-changing rewards. But 4 luxury cars? This must be worth about $1 million, give or take," Daniel finished for her. "A small price for my father's life in our family's view." Elena's neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, approached them, her eyes wide. "Elena, are these yours?" Before Elena could respond, Daniel stepped forward. "Yes, they are. Ms. Rodriguez saved my father's life 2 days ago. This is his way of saying thank you." The small crowd of neighbors murmured in surprise. "You saved someone's life?" Mrs. Patterson asked. At the cafe, another neighbor chimed in excitedly. "I saw the video online." "That was you?" Elena nodded, still overwhelmed by the situation. "Here are the keys and all the paperwork," Daniel said, handing her a folder and 4 sets of keys. "Everything's been taken care of. Registration, insurance, all of it. All you need to do is sign the transfer documents." Elena took the folder automatically, her mind racing. "I don't even know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Daniel assured her. "Though I should mention that my father has already called me 3 times this morning to ask if you've seen his gift yet. He's quite eager for your reaction." That made Elena laugh despite her shock. "Well, I'm certainly surprised. Would you like to try one?" Daniel offered, gesturing to the cars. "The Mercedes has been my personal favorite to drive, but the Bentley is exceptionally comfortable." Elena glanced at the vehicles, then back at Daniel. "I think I need to sit down first." They returned to her apartment, leaving the growing crowd of neighbors to admire the cars. Inside, Elena placed the folder and keys on her kitchen table and sank into a chair. "I never expected anything like this," she said finally. "When I helped your father, I didn't think about rewards or recognition. It's what anyone with my training would have done. But not everyone with your training would have been carrying a fully stocked medical bag after losing their job," Daniel pointed out. "Not everyone would have acted so quickly and competently. Dad's cardiologist said your CPR technique was textbook perfect. You kept blood flowing to his brain without any damage." He sat across from her. "You know, my father built his business on recognizing exceptional people and rewarding them accordingly." Elena ran her fingers over the car keys on the table. "I don't need 4 luxury cars." "No one needs 4 luxury cars," Daniel agreed with a smile. "But they could certainly change your life. The Mercedes alone would sell for over $100,000. Combined with the foundation position." "About that," Elena said, seizing the opportunity to change the subject. "I've been thinking about the offer and I'd like to accept it. The work sounds meaningful and I think I could really make a difference." Daniel's face brightened. "That's wonderful news. Dad will be thrilled. When can you start?" "As soon as needed," Elena replied. "Though I should probably talk to my daughter first. She'll be home from college this weekend." "Of course. How about next Monday? That would give you time to discuss everything with her. And speaking of your daughter," Daniel hesitated. "Dad mentioned something about helping with her tuition? Part of the foundation's work includes scholarships." Elena felt tears spring to her eyes unexpectedly. The past few days had been such an emotional roller coaster. From losing her job to saving Thomas to receiving these life-changing offers. The mention of help with Sophia's tuition, her biggest financial worry, was the final straw. "I'm sorry," she said, wiping at her eyes. "It's just been a lot to process." "Take all the time you need," Daniel said kindly. "The cars aren't going anywhere. Neither is the job offer." Elena took a deep breath and collected herself. "You know, I think I would like to try driving one of them." Daniel grinned. "That's the spirit." They went back outside where the crowd had grown even larger. Someone had recognized the cars as being from Whitfield Automotive and had spread the word about who Daniel was. A few people were even recording videos on their phones. Elena approached the Mercedes, running her hand along its sleek surface. The metal was cool and smooth beneath her fingers, the craftsmanship evident in every detail. She had never owned a new car, let alone a luxury vehicle. Her current car was 10 years old and had been bought used. "Go ahead," Daniel encouraged, handing her the Mercedes key. Elena pressed the button and the car chirped in response, doors unlocking with a solid-sounding click. She slid into the driver's seat, breathing in the rich scent of leather. The dashboard looked like something from a spaceship, all gleaming controls and digital displays. Daniel got into the passenger seat beside her. "The start button is on the right of the steering wheel." Elena pressed it and the engine came to life with a quiet purr. "It's so quiet," she marveled. "Take it for a quick spin around the block," Daniel suggested. With nervous excitement, Elena put the car in drive and carefully pulled away from the curb. The vehicle responded to the lightest touch, moving with a grace she had never experienced in a car before. By the time she completed a loop around the block, she was smiling. "What do you think?" Daniel asked as she parked the car back in its spot. "It's amazing," Elena admitted, "though I think I'd be afraid to drive it regularly." "You'll get used to it," Daniel assured her. "Or whichever one you decide to keep. The others can be sold or you could donate them back to the foundation for a tax write-off. It's completely up to you." Elena's phone rang. It was Sophia. "Mom? Are you okay? Someone from school just sent me a video of you getting into a Mercedes with a bunch of luxury cars outside our apartment. What's going on?" Elena laughed. "It's a long story, sweetheart. Remember that man I helped at the cafe? Well, it turns out he's very grateful and very generous." She glanced at Daniel, who was politely pretending not to listen. "And I think I just got a new job. One that might help with your tuition." "What? Really? Tell me everything." "I will when you're home this weekend. For now, just know that things are looking up. Way up." After ending the call, Elena turned to Daniel. "Your father has changed my life in ways I never imagined possible." "That's what he does," Daniel said with a warm smile. "He believes in changing lives for the better, whether it's through his business, his foundation, or personal gestures like this. And you changed his life first by giving him more time with his family." Elena looked at the 4 beautiful vehicles parked outside her modest apartment building. They represented a new beginning, a validation of her skills and worth that the hospital had failed to recognize. "Please tell your father I accept his gifts with gratitude," she said at last, "and that I look forward to working with the foundation to help others." Daniel nodded, clearly pleased. "He'll be discharged tomorrow. Would you like to tell him yourself? I'm sure he'd love to hear your reaction firsthand." "I'd like that very much," Elena replied, as they stood together on the sidewalk, surrounded by curious neighbors and gleaming cars. Elena felt something she hadn't experienced since losing her job, a sense of purpose and possibility. In helping Thomas Whitfield, she had not only saved his life but had unexpectedly transformed her own. Sometimes, she reflected, the most meaningful rewards come when you least expect them and from the most unexpected places.